Hello and welcome. Between Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's unprecedented address to the nation, defending his new economic policy initiatives and the relaunch of the Bharat Nirman ad campaign, the UPA-2 government, it seems, is in the mood to talk. So when Sam Pitroda, the trusted advisor to the Prime Minister in charge of public information infrastructure and innovation, engaged with people on Twitter, naturally it caused quite a stir. But with many people in social media and traditional media saying that they were underwhelmed by the experience, what does Mr. Pitroda make of the experience? What has the technocrat learned from this? What has it helped achieve for his plans for the democratization of information? And more critically, will this result, or is this going to be a turning point in the way this government engages with social media? Let's find out from Sam Pitroda. Mr. Pitroda, it's good to have you on the show again.
Thank you for inviting.
My first question is, did you expect the kind of attention and the kind of interest that your Twitter press conference managed to create?
No, we didn't. We were just trying to experiment with something new, something that had never been done before. And a lot of our young team members thought it'd be worth trying. So it was really their idea, their energy that sort of, got this together. The idea was to reach out to social media, go above normal routine press at press conference, where you normally get handful of people. They may have interest in the subject, they may not have interest in the subject.
If some of this information, in fact the facts, were available already for people who wanted it, would I be right in saying that this initiative that you undertook, where you tried out something new, is part of what the government you represent and advise? Is it a sign that the government wants to engage more via its trusted advisors?
No, I would say I'm just doing my job, which is to tell people what public information infrastructure is all about, what innovation is all about, and what we are trying to do. Other people will have to do their job and explain what they are doing. I've been now in the media for 30 years, and you all have been very kind to me. I reach out to people because in democracy, that's my job, to tell you what we are doing, why we are doing, and be very open, honest, frank, sincere.
So you're saying my theory that this is part of, a sort of concerted effort by this government at different levels, by different people, to engage with people, to communicate what it's doing and what it wants to do. You're saying that this theory is not correct.
There was not a big meeting of 20 people saying, Sam, you start tweeting. There was no such thing. I think it's all, imagination in your mind. Facts are, I decided that I want to go tweet. I didn't ask anybody, Fortunately, we got compliments from PM before we started. But it was our way of reaching out to people and really learning and experimenting with it.
Okay. 2 days after this was over, you actually put out a tweet saying that these are the lessons that you have had from this experience in terms of how you've conducted it. Okay, I think the first thing you said was you need more time, because I think you got 2,000 tweets. You managed to take 20 in a 45-minute time span. 50. 50. You also said...
And there were almost 800 odd questions.
Questions, yes.
And you can't read all 800 in that time frame because you are under tremendous pressure.
Right.
So you're scanning all these and your eye just zeroes in on that question. So you answer that question.
I'm sure that you know the stir that this has caused, isn't it? Social media has been talking about it. And of course, traditional media, news channels and newspapers have talked about it. Some of the criticism has been very, very harsh. And the criticism I'm going to split in two parts. The first kind of criticism has been on the execution, which means how Twitter savvy you were, for lack of a better way of putting it, okay? So whether you were using hashtags appropriately, how you were replying, all of that. What is your reaction to some of the feedback on execution?
Whenever you try something new, there will be criticism. If you are worried about criticism, don't try anything new. So I'm used to it. It don't bother me. It's your job to criticize. It's my job to do what I do. Okay, so I don't pay attention to that. Okay, it's your privilege to criticize, and I have to do what I have to do. Okay, so fine. At 70, I'm not as savvy as the 20-year-old, but that's a fact of life. I'm 70. You can't take that away from me. You know, I wish I was 20. Then I would be savvier. So it's okay. Fair criticism. Okay. I don't type the way my daughter types with 8 fingers. Too bad. You know, I'm not going to learn anymore how to type with 8 fingers. Now you can criticize me for that, which is fair. But that's what you got. You got a 70-year-old man who is tech savvy, may not be savvy in typing, understands all of the things that go in the back of Twitter, may not understand the front end of Twitter, but I know how Twitter is designed, I know how the microprocessors work, and I know all of that, the back end. Fiber optics works. I may not be as quick as you would want me to be, but too bad. What do? I can't change that. So take it as it is. Move on. Okay. When I get 800 questions, you are looking at your question and say, oh, he didn't answer my question. I'm humanly not capable of answering 800 questions. No one is. And that's why I wish I had more time. As opposed to 45 minutes, I wish we had an hour and a half maybe. Okay. 2, when I'm scanning through questions, what may interest you may not interest me. I'm going to answer questions that interest me. Nothing to do with hard questions, soft questions, it's all bogus.
In fact, that's the second part of the criticism or the feedback that's come, and that is that you stayed away from answering questions. You made it clear that you didn't answer questions that were not about your agenda.
I said this press conference is on
democratization
of information. So let's talk about that. Then don't go off on tangent and say, but what about Mayawati, what about this, what about that? I'm not into that. I'm not going to answer that because that's not relevant. Okay. Now, your interpretation could be, oh, that's a tough question, he didn't answer. Maybe you're right. Maybe I give you credit for that. I'm not there to answer questions which are not related to the
topic that you want to
topic
discuss.
that we were, calling a press conference on.
But Mr. Pitroda, isn't Twitter and what it represents, which is social media, which is the democratization of media, isn't it? Are you prepared as government or as a representative of this government, is this government prepared to understand with this democratized media that Twitter is, which is there are no rules, so people are not playing by the rules that we set down.
I'm setting rules for my press conference.
Right.
You got to respect that.
Okay.
You set rules for your press conference. That's okay, na? Now, if I'm conducting press conference, you can't expect me to follow your rules. Then you have press conference. It's that simple.
We have seen the UPA2 government, we've seen this government at very notable points in the past 2-3 years not seem to understand how to engage with social media, to engage with the people on social media. Do you think this government is handling social media, has handled social media effectively, given that it can also be a tool?
It is too early to make a comment. Government has not even made an attempt to handle this media effectively. So I think give a little more time. The fact is, if you want to reach out to younger people, if you want to reach out to urban, middle class, educated, college-going kids, this is one media that you can't ignore. Not that this is the only media.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have to learn to interact properly. In the process, you'll have to take a little bit of beating, which is okay.
And it could also be that in the process, you may make missteps. And when I say you, I don't mean you.
Of
I mean the
course.
government and the
Of
way, let's
course.
say, it's
That's
handled
okay.
the parody accounts, where it says shut down anything that makes fun of us. Because it's been seen as a thin-skinned government. So do you think that that can be handled better?
I believe you need to have bigger heart. It is okay for you to criticize me. You are entitled to do that in democracy. I'm okay with it. Personally, I don't take these things at heart.
When you were talking about the building of this National Knowledge Network, I think you said about 850 institutions had been hooked up already.
Nodes.
Nodes, not institutions.
More than 850 institutions. Each node could have multiple institutions.
Right.
Possible.
Okay, so 850 nodes
Nodes.
have been set up. You also talked about the fact that the Bharat Broadband project, the fiber optic cable that will link all your 2.5 lakh gram panchayats would be done in what, 18 to 24 months?
Yeah.
Is this project or is this plan moving at the pace that you think it should move at?
I would like Bharat Broadband to move a little faster. But there are so many different variables, from the state government to central government to, various implementing agencies. But we are very confident that it will get done. I think this is a huge initiative on the part of the government to invest this kind of money to build infrastructure required for the young, for their education, their skill development. And I think government needs to be given credit for that. Not because I'm part of the government, don't get me wrong, that's a separate issue. Okay? But in our system, you don't really get credit for visionary work. Everybody is too focused on instant gratification, immediate gains. No one looks at long term. And a lot of these projects are aimed at long-term benefits. I remember when we were working on telecom in 80s and computers and software and railway reservations, there was same amount of criticism, maybe more criticism. Saying, oh, what are these computer boys doing? What do they know about rural India? They have no idea. They should go live in rural India to understand. Why are they fixing telephones? They should be fixing water, sanitation. Of course. But let somebody else fix water, na? I know how to fix telephones, so let me fix telephones.
And see what a change it can bring. But Mr. Pitroda, are you saying that the challenges are similar to what you faced in the 80s? Because what the internet and what mobile telephony and mobile telephony have achieved are completely different.
Entirely different environment today than it was in 80s. 80s resistance was much bigger because we had not had the gains from privatization, liberalization, free market economy, entrepreneurial success stories. I think today we are a different country.
What is the resistance today? What are the roadblocks, whether it's digitizing
I
files,
think resistance
whether
today
it's
is more
laying
from
your
inside the government. Resistance today is more from the processes and people who are guiding processes, who consider their job is to guard these age-old processes that British Raj left behind.
You've called them 19th century, you quote something very often.
We have 19th century mindset,
yeah.
we have 20th century processes, and we have 21st century needs. I mean, the other day I had somebody saying, your young people cannot use on their laptops dongles because that's not allowed by the government. So I had to write a special note to the finance secretary saying, look, my young 10 staff members are constantly on internet.
And constantly, often on the move.
Constantly on the move.
Yeah.
And they are working everywhere. They are not working 8 hours. They don't go to come to office at 10 and leave at 5. I talk to them sometimes at midnight. And if you're asking me to take their communication away, they can't do their job. So you got to change your law. You got to change your process. I think that's the kind of, it's a simple example.
No,
may not be the best example.
But it shows a day-to-day hindrance to effective working.
Absolutely. So we have to change.
When you talk about these kind of challenges on a daily basis that you face, it was interesting that a lot of the questions or some of the questions that came to you when you did your Twitter conference were on the RTI. And you kept talking about how the public information infrastructures should actually be the backbone of the RTI. There is a fear, and in fact that is one of the things I think people felt, they wanted to ask you, was that there seems to be slowing down in the information that's coming out, to RTI applications. Do you think when your system, the PII falls into place exactly the way you have envisaged it, that things will be better?
No
or
question.
Is that something else?
No question about it. See, today right to information is there, but the information is locked up in Nadawali file. It is in manual format. So we have not been able to organize, structure information in a manner that you can access effectively. A lot of these questions should be answered online. And if you want to know what is the budget of this department, you don't have to write a letter to somebody. It should be online, na? 90% of the question, I would say 95% of the question, should be answered online by every department.
How far away are we from that kind of an ideal situation?
It will require fair amount of change in the mindset. We are building infrastructure for it.
Right.
Then we need to computerize Nadawali file. Then we need departments to open up their data. You know, we have developed open government platform where government data could be opened up for public. Every department has been asked to submit their data. Not many people are doing it. So we are constantly requesting them to give us some data that we can open up. Planning Commission has lots of data. Can we take all Planning Commission data and just open it up? It's public information. What's the big deal about it? I don't get it. But once you have this, then you don't have to ask anybody at RTI, what is the infant mortality in this state? It's available, it's accurate. But it's going to take time because it's a cultural issue. So far, everyone wants to hold on to information. Slowly and slowly, I think they'll get used to it. I'm hopeful.
You're hopeful. It's interesting that you say I'm hopeful, not confident.
No, I'm hopeful because they have to do it. I'm confident about my piece.
When you have to bring about change in processes, which is really where your pet interest is, isn't it? It's the same problems that you face.
I would like us to spend a lot of time in redesigning a lot of our processes. How do you get a birth certificate? How do you get land record? How do you apply for admission in school? Do I really need to submit 5 copies of the same certificate stamped by a gazetted officer? Does it make sense anymore? Can I apply for admission online only? You know, those are the issues. So you really need to go back and go through one by one all our processes. How do you file FIR? What is the police report like? Okay. And then see, does it make sense today? It was okay 50 years ago. If you were to do it today, how would you do it? That is a bigger challenge, I believe. Process re-engineering is a huge challenge in this country.
Do you have a timeline by which you think you would be able to achieve most of your goals when it comes to new processes, at least in the areas that you've set up for knowledge, let's say, information? Because we know that you were, what happened with the report of the modernization committee on the railways. What a high-powered committee.
That's okay, but the point is, we did our job as well as we knew how to do for the country.
Right.
I personally spent 6 months learning, writing, checking every line of the report because my signature was going to be on it. So it had to be reflecting my way of doing things. And then it got derailed. It's okay. That's what happens in democracy. I can't get discouraged. I have to move on. Somebody will pick it up because it's a good piece of work. So you can't get disheartened. You just have to move on because this country needs so many things. So railway is one example. It's important, very important. But you can't get stuck. There are hundreds of things to do in this country, from cleaning garbage to modernizing railways, to finding solutions to smart grids, to setting up semiconductor plant. I'm just talking about my own area, which is very narrow. There is mining and there is, art and craft and education and health. So much to do.
Mr. Pitroda, given that you've been working at nation building, for lack of a better word, or maybe the most appropriate word, in different ways for the last several decades, and given the challenges that this process in any way has, that are intrinsic to this process, How have the last 2-3 years been for you? Because we in the media and in the public are looking at this current government and the current scenario. On the one hand, on the economic front, you're seeing a slowdown, a big slowdown in our growth. And on the other hand, you're seeing the compulsions of politics. How does that affect, A, the morale of the technocrat, and B, the ability of you to execute what you've set out to do?
I do not get upset with a lot of these things. My morale doesn't depend on outside. I have to do what I have to do, and my inspiration has to come from within and not from outside.
But if
Of course, like you, I'm also concerned about these issues. Of course, I realize that I wish we had stronger government at the center, because the coalition at the center is not good for India, I believe. In the long run, India needs strong center. India needs ability to develop policies which are in the larger interest of growth, employment, prosperity, because only through these things will be able to address the challenges of poverty. Poverty cannot be eliminated by slogans and conversation. We need growth, and growth can only come if you have consistent, clear, visible commitment to policies. And I think coalition government has distracted to some extent growth agenda. But that's okay. I hope it is transient. And I have to do what I have to do. My work continues. Don't bother me a bit at all.
Mr. Pitroda, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I look forward to the
Thank
next outing on Twitter
You will have it very soon.
and then on Beautiful People.
Thank you.